Imagine the industrial heart of Europe. A colossal machine of precision engineering. Chemical plants that feed the world's supply chains. Steel mills forging the backbone of modern infrastructure. Automotive factories setting the global standard for excellence. For decades, Germany was that machine. The undisputed economic powerhouse of the continent. Stable, efficient, unstoppable. Now, imagine someone pulling the plug. Not slowly, not carefully, but yanking the main power cord out of the wall while the machine is running at full speed. The gears grind. The lights flicker. The conveyor belts seize up. This isn't a hypothetical scenario. This is what is happening right now in Germany. It is the story of the most catastrophic self-inflicted economic wound in modern history. A $500 billion gamble that went spectacularly wrong. They called it the energiewende. The energy turnaround. It was supposed to be a shining beacon of a green utopian future. A blueprint for how an advanced industrial nation could completely abandon fossil fuels and nuclear power. It was meant to save the planet. Instead, it is destroying Germany's economy. It is a tale of hubris, of ideological blindness, of geopolitical incompetence on a staggering scale. And if you think this is just Germany's problem, you aren't paying attention. This is a warning shot for every Western nation flirting with the same policies. Because what happens when the world's fourth largest economy voluntarily dismantles the very foundation of its wealth? We are about to find out. Before we dive into the anatomy of this disaster, I need to ask you something. Do you believe that a government would knowingly sacrifice its nation's industrial dominance on the altar of ideology? Or do you think the mainstream narrative is hiding the true cost of this transition from you? If you want the hard truths about global economics that others are too afraid to cover, you need to subscribe to this channel right now. Hit the like button if you're tired of being told everything is fine while your bills skyrocket. Comment below if you think your country is next. Let's uncover the truth. The story begins not with a plan, but with panic. 2011. The Fukushima disaster in Japan. A tidal wave hits a nuclear plant. The world watches in horror. In most capitals, the reaction was measured. Assess safety. Review protocols. In Berlin, it was hysteria. Chancellor Angela Merkel, a trained physicist who previously supported nuclear power, made an abrupt, stunning U-turn. Driven by a wave of public fear and looming regional elections, she announced the phase-out of all Germany's nuclear power plants. Understand the scale of this decision. Nuclear provided nearly a quarter of Germany's electricity. It was clean. It was cheap. Crucially, it was reliable baseload power. It ran 24/7, rain or shine, wind or calm. Shutting it down was like kicking away one of the four pillars holding up your house while promising to build a new foundation out of clouds. The plan was to replace this rock-solid power source with wind and solar. Massive investments poured in. Subsidies were handed out like candy. Solar panels blanketed rooftops in a country known for its gray skies. Wind turbines sprouted across the landscape and offshore. The price tag for this green dream began to climb. 100 billion. 200 billion. It is now estimated to have cost over $500 billion. $500 billion. For that amount of money, you could buy every major sports league in the world and still have enough left over to fund a small nation's GDP. But here is the dirty little secret they didn't broadcast. Wind and sun are intermittent. They are fickle friends. An industrial economy cannot run on power that only works when the weather cooperates. You need a backup. A massive, reliable backup for the Dunkelflaut, the dark doldrums when the wind dies and the sun sets. So, what did Germany do to plug the gap they created by killing nuclear? They didn't build massive battery storage, because the technology didn't exist at that scale. They didn't build more hydro. They turned to the east. They turned to Russia. This brings us to the second fatal error. The fatal dependency. The German strategy became reliant on a single, dangerous gamble. Cheap Russian natural gas would be the bridge fuel. It would keep the factories humming and the homes warm while they waited for the green utopia to fully arrive. German leaders convinced themselves of a concept called Wandel durch Handel. Change through trade. The idea was that by tying Russia's economy to Europe's through massive gas pipelines, they could ensure peace. They believed commerce would tame the geopolitical bear. It was a comforting delusion. It allowed them to feel virtuous about closing nuclear plants while burning massive amounts of imported gas. They built Nord Stream 1. Then they doubled down with Nord Stream 2, despite screaming warnings from Washington, Warsaw, and Kiev. Every American president, from Bush to Obama to Trump, warned Germany that they were putting a noose around their own neck and handing the other end to Vladimir Putin. The Germans scoffed. They called it alarmism. They called it American commercial self-interest. At one point, Germany was importing over half of its natural gas from Russia. Their entire industrial model, the chemical giants like BASF, the steel manufacturers, the glass makers, was predicated on the assumption that this cheap gas would flow forever. It was an economic model built on a trapdoor. And in February 2022, the trapdoor swung open. Russia invaded Ukraine. The illusion of change through trade evaporated instantly along with the smoke from Russian tanks. The geopolitical reality crashed down on Berlin with devastating force. Suddenly, the cheap energy that fueled the German miracle became a weapon of war. Putin started throttling the supply. Then the pipelines were sabotaged. The bridge fuel collapsed. The result was an energy shock of apocalyptic proportions. Spot electricity prices in Germany didn't just double or triple. At peak times, they increased tenfold. Natural gas prices went vertical. Imagine your monthly electric bill suddenly going from $200 to $2,000. Now imagine you are a steel foundry using millions of dollars of electricity a month. The math stopped working instantly. Panic set in. The government scrambled to fill gas storage facilities at any price, buying liquefied natural gas on the open market, outbidding poorer nations and driving global prices through the roof. They spent billions bailing out energy utility companies that were facing bankruptcy. The $500 billion energiewende bill kept growing. But money couldn't print energy. The hard truth was revealed. All those solar panels and wind turbines couldn't power a chemical cracker plant at 3 a.m. in December. The green dream crashed into the hard wall of physics and geopolitics. And the victim was German industry. This is where the tragedy becomes tangible. We entered the phase of industrial suicide. Deindustrialization is a dry, academic term. Let me tell you what it looks like in reality. It looks like blast furnaces going cold for the first time in 50 years. It looks like production lines at aluminum smelters grinding to a halt because the electricity to melt the metal costs more than the finished product is worth. It looks like the middle stand, the thousands of small and medium-sized family-owned manufacturers that are the backbone of the German economy, quietly closing their doors. These aren't fly-by-night operations. These are companies that survived 2 world wars and the Great Depression. They could not survive the energiewende. The giants started moving too. BASF, the largest chemical producer in the world, a company synonymous with German industrial might, announced it was permanently downsizing its presence in Europe. Where are they going? China. America. Places where energy is cheap and reliable. Volkswagen, the jewel of the German auto industry, warned that Europe was becoming uninvestable due to energy costs. 1 in 3 German industrial businesses is currently planning to shift investment abroad. This is not a temporary blip. This is a structural dismantling of the industrial base. When these factories leave, they don't come back. The supply chains are broken. The skilled knowledge is lost. Germany is facing the terrifying prospect of becoming a rust belt. A museum of former industrial glory. And why? Because they turned off reliable power before they had a viable replacement. But wait, the defenders of the policy say. We have so much renewable capacity now. On sunny days, we produce more power than we need. This leads us to the 5th element of the disaster, the grid nightmare. Yes, on a perfectly sunny, windy Sunday afternoon in May, Germany produces a lot of green energy. Sometimes so much that electricity prices turn negative. Power plants have to pay people to take the excess electricity off the grid so it doesn't overload. That sounds great, until you realize the insanity of it. They are paying neighbors to take excess power at noon, and then desperately importing nuclear power from France or coal power from Poland at midnight when the renewables drop to zero. This intermittency creates chaos for the grid operators. They have to constantly intervene, paying conventional power plants to ramp up and down frantically to balance the erratic swings of wind and solar. These redispatch costs have ballooned into the billions, all paid for by the consumer in higher grid fees. Furthermore, because you cannot rely on wind and solar, you have to maintain a complete parallel system of fossil fuel plants on standby just in case. So Germany is paying for two energy systems to do the job of one. It is hideously inefficient. And the ultimate irony? To keep the lights on during the energy crisis, the Green Party-led coalition government had to restart mothballed coal-fired power plants. They had to delay the final shutdown of their last 3 nuclear plants, admitting through gritted teeth that they were necessary for survival over the winter. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. They were burning lignite, the dirtiest form of coal, because they shut down zero-emission nuclear reactors out of ideological stubbornness. By this point, the pain was moving from the industrial parks to the living rooms of average citizens. The 6th stage of this blunder is the political backlash. The German people were told the energiewende would cost the equivalent of a scoop of ice cream per month on their electric bill. That was the famous promise made by a former environment minister. That scoop of ice cream has become a banquet of unaffordable costs. German households already pay some of the highest electricity rates in the world. But the breaking point came not from electricity, but heat. The government, desperate to meet climate targets, tried to ram through a law effectively banning new oil and gas heating systems, forcing homeowners to install expensive heat pumps. For many older German homes, this was practically impossible or ruinously expensive. The public exploded. It was one thing for abstract industrial policy to fail. It was another for the government to reach into people's basements and demand they spend tens of thousands of euros they didn't have on technology that might not work in their drafty houses. The arrogance of the technocrats in Berlin collided with the financial reality of the citizenry. The ruling coalition plummeted in the polls. Populist parties, particularly the AfD on the far right, surged. They campaigned on a simple platform: stop the green insanity, turn the nuclear plants back on, and secure cheap energy. And people listened. Not because they are extremists, but because they are desperate. The green transition, managed so poorly, has become the single biggest destabilizing force in German politics since unification. It has polarized the country and eroded trust in democratic institutions. When people feel that ideology is being prioritized over their ability to heat their homes and keep their jobs, they revolt. And now we arrive at the final, bitterest irony. The hollow victory. The defenders of the government point to one statistic: Germany's carbon emissions are dropping. They hit a 70-year low in 2023. See, they say, it's working. But why are they dropping? Are they dropping because of a glorious transition to green technology? No. They are dropping because the factories are closing. They are dropping because energy-intensive industries are fleeing the country. It is the piece of the graveyard. If your strategy for lowering emissions is to destroy your economy, then yes, you will succeed. A pre-industrial society has very low carbon emissions. Is that the goal? Of course not. But it is the reality of what is happening. Germany is achieving its climate goals by sacrificing its prosperity. It has become the sick man of Europe once again. The economy is stagnating, teetering in and out of recession while the rest of the world grows. The $500 billion investment has yielded a fragile grid, some of the highest energy prices on Earth, a deindustrializing economy, and a politically fractured society. It is a blunder of historic proportions. A case study in how good intentions, unmoored from economic and engineering reality, lead to disaster. Germany wanted to show the world the future. And they did. But it's not the future they intended. They showed us a future where ideology trumps reason, where geopolitical risks are ignored until it's too late, where the stability of the electric grid is treated as an afterthought. They proved that you cannot run a 21st century industrial economy on 13th century technology like windmills unless you have a 21st century backup plan. Germany removed the foundation of its success, cheap, reliable energy, and is now shocked that the house is collapsing. The world is watching. China is watching, building coal and nuclear plants as fast as they can while selling solar panels to Europe. America is watching, enjoying its bounty of cheap natural gas while its competitors stumble. The question is no longer can Germany save its green dream. The question is, can Germany save its economy from its green dream? This isn't just about energy. It's about the survival of the West's industrial model. If the engine of Europe can break itself this badly, what does it mean for the rest of us? Think about the decisions your own government is making right now. Are they based on engineering reality or wishful thinking? The cost of getting it wrong isn't just money. It's your way of life. The battle for the future is being fought on the power grids of the world. If you want to understand this battle, you need to stay informed. Don't rely on the comforting lies. Seek the uncomfortable truths. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.